when a poor farmer saves two billionaire sisters, and a forbidden love ruins his life, until he discovers a secret that changes everything. This is the true story of John, and it begins on a remote ranch, under a torrent that beat the earth as if the sky were crying in advance. John, a 30-year-old man in simple clothes, checkered shirt, worn jeans, and mud-caked boots, rushed to shelter his horses in the stable. His face carried the resilience of someone who knows the worth of sweat, but few knew his hidden nobility. On the cabin wall, a faded photo showed him smiling beside underprivileged children from a local charity, to which he donated part of his income. He was an anonymous hero, on the edge of a twist he could not have imagined. In that storm, a luxury car, a black Mercedes-Benz, appeared on the dirt road, battling forward until it sank into deep mud. Inside, two billionaire sisters argued in raised voices. Sophia, dark-haired and wrapped in an immaculate tailored suit worth more than the entire ranch, was visibly irritated. Where did this global positioning system even take us? Father will be furious if we arrive late for dinner, she said, folding her arms with arrogance. Emily, blonde hair falling over a pale satin dress and a string of pearls, gazed out the window with a calm that contrasted with her sister's temper. At least we are safe from the storm, Sophia. Perhaps someone here can help us. Then John approached, soaked through, and tapped lightly on the window. Do you need help? The car is stuck. I can pull it out with my tractor, he offered, his voice steady, carrying quiet confidence. Sophia rolled her eyes. A tractor? Seriously? I would rather call a professional tow truck, she replied, disdain sharp in her tone. But Emily ignored her and gave John a timid smile. Thank you. We will take any help. As John worked to fasten the car to the tractor, the wind howled harder, and a nearby tree, fatigued by the storm, began to tilt with a terrifying crack. John shouted a warning, sprinted to pull Emily out of danger, but in the fright she stumbled and fell, twisting her ankle and scraping her arm on a sharp stone. Sophia stepped out, alarmed. Emily! Are you all right? Emily held her injured foot, pain shadowing her expression. I think I hurt my ankle, and my arm is bleeding a little. John knelt beside her, his eyes meeting hers for an instant that seemed to freeze time. There was instant chemistry, a connection beyond simple courtesy, as if fate had placed them there for a larger purpose. He helped her up and, under rain that had softened to a drizzle, led them into his cabin. The interior was rustic, with weathered wooden walls and a lamp on the table casting a warm, amber glow. Raindrops slid down the window, setting a contrast between the cold outside and the tense comfort inside. Within, the scene unfolded like a dramatic painting, John on one knee on the plank floor, sleeves rolled, dressing Emily's wounded forearm with white gauze. His hands were steady yet gentle, and her arm, lit by the lamp, became the focal point of the tension. Emily, seated on a rough wooden bench, kept her eyes lowered, serene yet sad, while her elegant dress shimmered in the light, a symbol of a world of luxury that now felt distant. Sophia watched from the right corner, half in shadow, long coat wrapped around her, face stern and suspicious. She was the silent guardian of the status quo, witnessing a moment that could shake everything. You do this with such ease, Emily whispered, breaking the heavy silence. John did not look up, focused on the bandage. I grew up tending to injured animals. People are rarer, he answered, with a simplicity that touched something deep within her. From the corner, Sophia cut in, her voice sharp. Emily, remember father is on his way. Let us not drag this out. Emily ignored her, keeping her gaze on John. A wound is a wound. Animal or person, the care is the same, she said, inadvertently echoing the values John carried. Peace shattered at the distant thrum of an approaching helicopter. Robert Blackwood, the sister's father, was arriving, and he would not come with good intentions. A chill ran down John's spine, unaware that this moment of connection would ignite a chain of events that nearly destroyed his life, until a dark secret came to light. Imagine the scene. A simple man, heartbreaking, watches the woman he saved being pulled away by a father who believes love has a price. This is the continuation of John's story, and it unfolds in the hours and days after Robert Blackwood's stormy arrival. In that moment, John's ranch, a place that had always been his refuge, became a stage for humiliation and hurt. Robert descended from the helicopter like a hurricane of arrogance, wearing a suit that cost more than the cabin itself, his face marked by the chill that only absolute power can carve. "Keep your hands off my daughter, you insignificant pauper," he growled, yanking Emily by the arm as she tried to explain. John stood frozen, not by anger, but by the helplessness of watching the connection that had bloomed between them crushed like an insect beneath a giant's boot. Sophia, gazed lukewarm with disdain, followed her father, but Emily, oh, Emily, her eyes found John's one last time, and in them lived a silent apology and an unspoken promise. In the days that followed, John moved like a ghost through his own ranch. Every corner of the cabin carried Emily's memory, the bench where she sat, the lamp that lit her face, even the faint trace of her perfume still in the air. He tried to return to routine, feeding the horses, mending fences, tending the garden, but his mind stayed trapped in that bandaging moment, their hands almost touching, the chemistry that defied the world's logic. At night, he sat at the table, looking at the photo of the charity's children, and questioned his own worth. "I saved her, but I could not protect her from her own father," he whispered to himself, his voice echoing in the solitude. The emotion of the conflict was palpable. It was not only about a rescue or a humiliation, but about losing something pure in a world corrupted by money. Meanwhile, Emily was taken back to the Blackwood mansion, a castle of marble and glass that felt more like a gilded prison. Her life returned to the oppressive rhythm of formal dinners, business meetings, and practiced smiles. She slept in a bedroom overlooking immaculate gardens, but dreamed of the warm cabin and of John kneeling, tending her wound with a gentleness she had never known. In an organic flashback, she remembered childhood, Robert, still a man on the rise, working late and telling her, "Money is the only thing that protects us, Emily. Never forget that." But now she saw that this protection was a cage. She began to question the values pressed upon her, luxury, status, blind obedience, and longed for the honest simplicity that John embodied. In that anguish, John decided to seek answers. He called Daniel, his longtime friend, an investigative journalist in the city. Daniel was the voice of conscience, ethical and practical, always warning John about the dangers of the corporate world. They met in a modest cafe downtown, far from curious eyes. "John, you are stepping into something dangerous," Daniel said, hands cupping his coffee, worry etched across his face. "The Blackwoods are not only rich, they are ruthless. Robert has enemies everywhere, and he crushes anyone who stands in his way." John looked at his friend, determination heavy in his eyes. "I cannot simply forget, Daniel. There was something real between us." And I saw fear in her eyes. Daniel sighed, recognizing John's unshakable ethics. "All right, I will help. But we must be careful. Let me dig into Robert. There are rumors about his past, things he hides." Meanwhile, Robert Blackwood justified himself to Sophia in his opulent boardroom. "I came from nothing, Sophia," he said, his voice deep, echoing off paneled oak. "My family was poor, we went hungry. I did what I had to do to get here, things you cannot imagine. And I will not let my daughters get involved with someone who could drag them back into the mud." Although Sophia agreed with him, an unease grew within her. She saw Emily's pain and secretly admired John's courage. "Father, what if he is different?" she dared to ask. Robert laughed, a bitter sound. "Everyone is the same when it comes to money, dear. He is an idealist, and idealists break easily." The emotional tension rose when Emily, exhausted by oppression, decided to act. On a rainy night, she slipped into the garden and used a disposable cell phone to send a secret message to John. "I need to see you. Meet me at the cafe in the city tomorrow, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Please come." The message was short, but thick with hope and fear. When John received it, a chill ran through him, and warmth followed. He knew it might be a trap, but the chance to revive their connection was irresistible. He looked at Daniel, who had returned with preliminary findings on Robert, evidence of past fraud in government contracts. "It is now or never," John murmured, choosing to risk everything. The plan was hazy. He would go to the meeting, but with the caution of someone who knows danger waits. What would happen when they met again? Would it be the start of an alliance or the trigger for a deeper fall? In his solitude, John replayed the bandage moment, the way his hands cradled Emily's arm, the lamp's soft glow casting dancing shadows, the silence that spoke louder than words. He wondered if that connection was real or only a brief detour from his ordinary life. Emily, in turn, battled the expectations of her world. She remembered a conversation with her grandmother, gone years ago, who had told her, "True love knows no class, my dear. It finds a way." That memory strengthened her, feeding her quiet rebellion. As Daniel investigated, he uncovered that Robert did not only commit fraud, he buried his past. Born in a poor neighborhood, he had used false names to climb. His actions, however cruel, sprang from a place of trauma and fear. The stage for Emily and John's reunion was a cafe, a simple place with wooden tables and the scent of fresh coffee. John arrived early, heart pounding. He watched the rain outside, remembering the storm that had brought them together. Emily appeared, disguised by a hat and a plain coat, but her eyes shone with the same familiar light. They sat in a secluded corner, and their words ran free. She spoke of her father's control, he of his simple life and how she had made him question everything. "I do not want your money, Emily," he said, voice firm. "I want you, your laugh, your courage, your soul." She smiled, for the first time in weeks. "I want that too, John. But my father, he will destroy us." Then John shared what Daniel had found, fraud, a shadowed past. "Perhaps we can use this," he suggested, a plan forming in his mind. John decided to act, but not alone. He would confront Robert with the truth, risking everything for love. What he did not know was that Sophia watched from a distance, her face a mix of curiosity and divided loyalty, and that her decision could change the course of everything. John left the cafe with his heart racing, the conversation with Emily echoing in his mind like a chorus of hope and danger. The fine rain that fell over the city washed away some of his anxiety, but not all of it. He knew Robert Blackwood was not a man to underestimate. Every step toward the truth had to be taken with a surgeon's precision and a ghost's discretion. In the days after the secret meeting, John plunged into meticulous investigation, guided by the leads Daniel, his journalist friend, had begun to unearth. The discoveries came in stages. Like pieces of a cursed puzzle, Robert did not only commit fraud in public contracts, he also maintained a network of powerful allies, politicians, judges, business magnates, who guarded his empire with the chill of people without scruples. Daniel, seated in his cluttered office, showed John documents that revealed suspicious offshore transactions and the names of shell companies used to launder money. "He does not act alone, John," Daniel whispered, pointing to a list that included a real estate tycoon and a corrupt former mayor. "This network is a web. Touch one strand, and all the others tremble." As John dug deeper, life for Emily inside the Blackwood mansion grew more oppressive. Robert, suspicious of his daughter's behavior, increased surveillance. Discreet cameras appeared in the corridors, and her movements were monitored by guards who seemed more like shadows than people. Emily felt the weight of that gilded prison, each stolen moment of freedom feeding her resolve to fight. She began to watch her father with a sharper eye, noting how he hissed into urgent phone calls or how his face hardened whenever someone mentioned government inquiries. At a gala dinner, she overheard Robert speaking with a tall man in an impeccable suit, Eduardo Silva, a lobbyist known for dirty influence. "The ranch problem needs to be handled, Eduardo," Robert said, his voice low but loaded with threat. A chill ran through Emily. She knew the ranch meant John and his simple refuge. The tension between father and daughter grew in silence, an underground river of fear and defiance threatening to overflow. At the same time, John's life on the ranch became a battlefield without visible lines. He spent sleepless nights poring over Daniel's documents, tracing connections between the names that surfaced. Each discovery struck at his innocence. He saw how money could corrupt even the noblest souls and how Robert, a man born in poverty, used wealth to crush others. On a rainy afternoon, an unexpected visitor arrived. Sophia, Emily's sister, pulled up in a discreet car, conflict etched across her face. "We need to talk, John," she said, stepping cautiously into the cabin. "Emily is suffering, and I do not want to watch everything collapse." Sophia revealed that Robert was planning something larger, a regional land acquisition involving illegal evictions of humble families, including the area around John's ranch. "He has allies everywhere, John. Even in the local police. If you stand against him, they will crush you." The conversation was tense, but John saw a spark of humanity in Sophia. She was not as cold as she seemed, only frightened by her father's shadow. The antagonistic net spread like a cancer. Eduardo Silva began appearing more often, visiting the ranch under the pretense of environmental inspections that were clearly traps. Men in dark suits prowled the area, snapping photos and asking neighbors suspicious questions. John felt the threat closing in, each day tightening the pressure. His horses fell mysteriously ill, and fences were vandalized during the night, small attacks meant to drain his will. Daniel warned him, "They are testing you, John. Prodding to see how far you will go." The parallel tension between John and Robert intensified, even without a direct confrontation. It was a war of nerves, with John defending his ground with the same stubborn care he used on the wounded. At a crucial moment, John chose to act. He slipped into a charity gala organized by Robert, a glossy affair where the rich and powerful paraded false generosity. Dressed simply, invisible among tuxedos and designer gowns, John watched Robert speak about ethics in business while whispering orders to Eduardo in the wings. Then he saw something shocking. Robert received an envelope from a man John recognized from Daniel's photos, an influential politician tangled in corruption scandals. The envelope's contents were a mystery, but the exchange was swift and furtive, confirming Robert's web of power was even wider than John had imagined. He left the event with a heavy heart, knowing he now held proof that Robert was not only an overprotective father, but a dangerous criminal. But just as John felt he was gaining ground, a new threat surfaced. The next morning, he received an anonymous call. A distorted voice warned, "Beware those behind the curtains, rancher. Robert is only the tip of the iceberg." The message was vague, but the implication was clear. There were players more powerful than Robert, people who would not tolerate interference. The danger expanded, and John found himself entangled in a web that threatened to swallow not only him, but everyone he loved. The anonymous call tolled in John's mind like a funeral bell, each word a dark warning about dangers crouching in the shadows. He spent the night awake at his cabin table, Daniel's documents spread before him, his hands trembling as he turned pages that detailed Robert Blackwood's corruption. The rancher was not a man of hatred, but the injustice he witnessed, Robert's oppression of Emily, the power network poised to crush the innocent, lit a fire in his soul. He stood at a crossroads, seek revenge, exposing Robert in a way that would devastate him, or choose a path of education, using truth to awaken consciences and perhaps even redeem those involved. The inner battle was fierce. John remembered his humble childhood, where he learned compassion was stronger than rancor, but the humiliation he had suffered in Emily's pain pressed him toward ferocity. At dawn, John met Daniel in an abandoned warehouse on the city's edge, a discreet place where they could speak without being overheard. Dim light slipped through the slats, illuminating dust that danced in the air. Daniel, with his laptop and folders of proof, presented more findings. Robert not only laundered money, he bribed officials to approve construction projects that displaced entire communities. "John, we have the weapon to bring him down," Daniel whispered. "But how we use it matters. If we publish everything at once, Robert can wield his influence to discredit us and even harm Emily. We need a smart strategy." John nodded, determination set in his face. "I do not want blind revenge, Daniel. I want justice, and if possible, I want Robert to understand the harm he has done. There may be a chance for redemption, even for him." They decided to expose Robert gradually, beginning with controlled leaks to the press, building public pressure and avoiding violent retaliation. Meanwhile, in the Blackwood mansion, Robert felt the noose tightening. His paranoia grew by the day. He hired more security and installed advanced surveillance, fearing John or other enemies might draw near. In a private meeting with Eduardo Silva, Robert revealed a more vulnerable side. "I built all of this from nothing, Eduardo," he confessed, staring out at the immaculate gardens. "My family starved when I was a child, and I swore I would never go back. But now, that rancher, that John, he reminds me of who I was, and I hate that." Calculating as ever, Eduardo urged harsher measures. "Robert, we can buy his silence or destroy his name. We have politicians in our pocket who can accuse him of fabricated crimes. It is time to come down hard." Robert hesitated, pride wrestling with a remnant of humanity. "Not yet. Try to buy him first. Offer money, enough to make him vanish. The conflict widened when Sophia, split between family loyalty and conscience, chose to act. She visited John in secret, bringing crucial information about Robert's land grab. "My father is about to close a deal with a powerful politician, Senator Almeida, to evict families across this region and build a luxury complex," she explained, hands shaking. "If it happens, hundreds will lose their homes, including you." John listened, feeling a spark of hope as Sophia aligned herself with his cause. Together, they discussed methods. Rather than attack Robert head-on, they would mobilize the community, educate people about their rights, organize peaceful protests. John set to work, meeting local leaders and recording testimonials from threatened families. The strategy was shrewd: use media and social networks to expose Robert's greed while protecting the vulnerable. The antagonists struck back. On Robert's orders, Eduardo sent men to intimidate John. One dark night, as John returned from a meeting, his truck was boxed in by two black cars on a deserted road. Men in suits stepped out, hoods masking their faces, and demanded that John abandon the investigation. "Take the money and disappear, or worse things will happen," one threatened, hefting an iron bar. John kept calm and refused. "Tell Robert the first I'm not for sale," he said, before escaping through a forest cutaway. The incident proved the conflict had grown beyond love or humiliation. It was about the survival of an entire community. When Robert heard of John's resistance, rage overtook him. He summoned Senator Almeida, a heavy-set man with piercing eyes who smelled of corrupt power. In an exclusive restaurant, Robert laid out a larger bribe in exchange for political muscle to silence John and speed up the evictions. "Senator, ensure these poor devils are removed quickly, and you will receive a generous share of the profits," Robert murmured, sliding over an envelope thick with cash. The senator smiled and closed the deal. "Do not worry, Blackwood. I will handle it personally." Robert's arc deepened, his greed blinded him, but flashes of remorse surfaced whenever he thought of Emily, who now avoided his eyes. Determined to pursue his path of education and resistance, John organized a town hall meeting. Dozens attended, farm families, field workers, and a few city allies. He and Daniel presented evidence against Robert, explaining how the corruption wounded everyone. "We are not fighting for revenge, but for justice and dignity," John said, his voice ringing through the hall. "If we stand together, we can show the world the truth." The crowd answered with applause and pledges of support, forming a strong coalition. Informed by Sophia, Emily sent a secret message of encouragement: "I am with you, John. Do not give up." Yet as the movement gathered strength, a new threat arrived. The next morning, Senator Almeida appeared unannounced with a fake smile and a team of lawyers. "Mr. John, I am here to make a final offer," he announced at the ranch gate. "Abandon this foolish rebellion and you will receive generous compensation. Otherwise, I will be forced to take legal measures, and I have allies in the judiciary who can ruin your life forever." The politician's presence was a sinister warning. John understood the fight had escalated to a perilous level. Not only Robert, but an entire corrupt system stood against him. He stared at the horizon, knowing the choice before him, to retreat or face the giant, would define not only his future, but the future of everyone he loved. The senator's threat hung over John like a black cloud, foretelling a storm ready to tear everything apart. In the days that followed, the rancher felt the weight of the struggle in a new, crushing way. Attacks intensified on multiple fronts, each more cruel and calculated than the last. First came the legal actions. False lawsuits over supposed environmental crimes and land disputes poured down on John, draining his already scarce resources. He spent hours in law offices fighting fabricated charges, while the cost of defense threatened to bankrupt the ranch. In parallel, the local press, swayed by Robert's allies, published defamation, painting John as an opportunist exploiting the community for personal gain. These attacks were not only practical, they were emotional. They stained the reputation he cherished and eroded the trust he had built with neighbors. While John battled in courtrooms and in the media, his personal life unraveled. The solitude he had always felt on the ranch deepened into isolation. Many who once supported him pulled back, afraid of reprisals from Robert and Senator Almeida. At a community meeting meant to be a moment of unity, John saw empty chairs and averted eyes. Even Daniel, his most loyal friend, began to show fatigue. "John, I do not know how long we can hold this," he admitted on a rainy night as they reviewed documents in the abandoned warehouse. "They have too much power, and they are willing to go all the way." Doubt settled not only in John's heart, but in those around him. Hope seemed to leak away, replaced by fear. The emotional bottom arrived with a blow that cut deepest. The charity to which John donated part of his income, the project that gave meaning to his life, became the target of a fraudulent investigation orchestrated by Eduardo Silva. Donations were frozen, and the children who depended on that support were left with nothing. John visited and saw their confused faces. The pain was worse than any public humiliation. He wondered if his fight was worth it, if he was not making everything worse. Back home, in the silent cabin, he cried for the first time in years, crushed by the weight of so many hopes as his own world caved in. Practically, the situation turned untenable. His horses, already weakened by earlier sabotage, fell gravely ill due to suspected water contamination, another hidden strike. Ranch fences were repeatedly torn down, and one night, arsonists tried to burn the barn. John managed to put out the fire, but the message was clear: they would not stop until everything he loved was ash. To make matters worse, the bank where he kept his savings froze his accounts, citing suspicions of illegal activity stirred up by Robert's allies. With no money for bills or feed, John depended on the charity of a few friends, an irony bitter for a man who had always taken pride in his independence. Amid the chaos, the organic twists came from unexpected places. Sophia, wavering between family loyalty and conscience, arrived with critical information. Under pressure from Senator Almeida, Robert was planning a final strike, a sweeping, forced eviction across the region the following week, backed by corrupt police. "He is desperate, John," Sophia whispered, pale. "And he is afraid of you, afraid the truth about his past will come out." But her revelation carried a painful surprise. In a moment of weakness, Sophia had told Robert about John's secret meetings with Emily. As a result, Robert cut Emily off completely, transferring her to a distant property under constant watch. The news devastated John. He lost not only a potential ally, but his last direct link to the woman he loved. Doubt spread like a virus. Even John began to question his own strategy. Was the peaceful, educational approach too naive against such a relentless enemy? In a weak moment, he considered the cash offer Robert had extended through Eduardo, a sum that would solve his immediate problems, but would betray his principles and abandon the community. He remembered Daniel's words: "Sometimes, the battle is too big for one man." The community, once united, now seemed fractured. Some accused John of bringing Robert's fury upon them, while others whispered that he was an incompetent leader. Support that once felt solid crumbled, leaving John alone on the front line. The lowest point came on a stormy night, when one of Robert's men arrived with an ultimatum. If John did not give up and leave town within 48 hours, Emily would face irreversible consequences. The message was vague, but the meaning was clear. Robert would use his own daughter as bargaining chip. John stood frozen, staring into the rain, feeling every choice pull him closer to the abyss. He did not know if Emily was safe, if his fight had put her in danger, and guilt ate at him from within. At the climax of this strategic fall, a final twist deepened the crisis. In a desperate attempt to help, Daniel broke into Robert's servers to secure concrete proof, but he was discovered. Law officers, some corrupt, arrested Daniel for hacking, and the evidence he had gathered was seized. With Daniel in jail and hope draining away, John found himself without allies, without resources, and without a plan. The community lay in tatters. Emily was symbolically imprisoned by her own father, and the ranch stood on the edge of ruin. John looked toward the horizon, rain mixing with his tears, and realized every door was closing. The situation felt irreversible, as if nothing could yet be done to stop the looming catastrophe. The darkness that swallowed John after Daniel's arrest and Robert's ultimatum felt impenetrable, as if the world had turned upside down with no way back. He spent the first night shackled by doubt and despair, sitting on the cabin floor with his eyes fixed on the lamp that had once lit Emily's face. Only the rain outside broke the silence, a melancholy echo of his loneliness. John questioned every choice, whether his fight for justice was, deep down, a stubborn pride that had put everyone at risk. Yet even at the bottom, a spark still flickered. He remembered his grandmother's words, spoken years before, "Good does not give up, John. It reinvents itself." That memory lifted him in the small hours, his determination renewed, if careful. He knew he needed a miracle, but he had learned that miracles often came from where no one expected. The first sign of hope arrived at dawn with an unexpected visitor. Sophia came to the ranch, her face pale from sleepless nights but steadied by resolve. She did not arrive in a luxury car, but on foot, wrapped in a simple coat to avoid attention. "John, I cannot stand by any longer," she said, her voice trembling yet firm. "My father crossed a line when he threatened Emily, and I have seen what he is willing to do, not only to you, but to the innocent. I have access to his private files, and there are things there he would never want brought to light." For years, fear had kept Sophia from acting. Now, with Emily virtually sequestered on a distant rural estate, she reached her breaking point. She became the unlikely ally, the missing piece John needed to rebuild his plan. Together, they agreed that Sophia would use her access to Robert's network to gather hard evidence, while John would rally the last threads of support in the community. In the city, Daniel's arrest sparked a quiet outrage among those who still believed in the cause. A small group of residents, led by Maria, an elderly woman who had lost her land to Robert's projects, began meeting in secret. They were not powerful, but they were persistent, and they held lived stories capable of moving even the coldest hearts. With a gentle but unshakable voice, Maria reminded John, "We are like ants, John. Alone we are small, but together we can move a mountain." The support network formed slowly, with people bringing what little they had, hidden documents, testimonies recorded on old phones, even contacts with independent journalists outside Robert's reach. They shifted tactics from frontal assault to strategic collection of irrefutable proof, receipts of bribes, recordings of conversations between Robert and Senator Almeida, financial records that traced the theft of public funds. With Sophia's help, John accessed a backup of the data Daniel had gathered before his arrest. They discovered Robert was not acting alone. Behind him stood a darker figure, an international consortium of investors using Robert as a front to acquire land across the country. This consortium, led by a man known only as the Benefactor, had ties to larger crimes, including money laundering on a global scale. Robert's motivations became clearer in that light. He was, in part, captive to his own ambition, bound in a web where disobedience meant his ruin. In a rare moment of vulnerability, Sophia shared a diary she found in Robert's safe, pages detailing his poor childhood and a vow never to return to hunger, even if it meant stepping on others. "He is not a monster, John," she whispered. "He is a frightened man who lost his way." The perspective did not excuse his actions, but it added a tragic layer to his character, making him more human, and, in a way, more dangerous. Armed with evidence, John and his allies planned a public reveal. They chose a live broadcast through an independent platform, avoiding the traditional channels Robert controlled. The stream would be masked as a documentary about rural communities, to keep suspicion low, and would include live testimonies from witnesses, including Maria and others facing eviction. Sophia risked everything by recording a confession about her role in covering up her father's actions, and John prepared a speech that exposed not only corruption, but the human story behind it, the suffering Robert had ignored in his climb to power. The strategy was smart. By humanizing the struggle, they hoped to move the public and create pressure neither Robert nor his allies could withstand. The night of the broadcast arrived, taut with expectation. John, Sophia, and a small team gathered in an abandoned shed with simple recording gear. The live feed opened with images of the ranch and the community, followed by heartfelt testimonials. When John spoke, his voice was calm but charged with feeling. "This is not a story about revenge, but about truth. And the truth is that no one should be destroyed for loving, or for fighting for a place to call home." Sophia unveiled the evidence, documents, recordings, even emails linking Robert to the international consortium. The reaction was immediate. On social media, the hashtag Justice for the Ranch began to trend, and reporters from major outlets, initially skeptical, started to relay the information. But as the broadcast gained momentum, the cliffhanger revealed itself. In the final minutes, an anonymous message flashed on John's phone. "You have kicked the wasp's nest, rancher. The Benefactor does not forgive." Almost at the same moment, Sophia received a terrifying call. Robert, in a fury, had discovered her betrayal and threatened to reveal a secret from her past, something she had buried for years. The danger spiked. It was no longer only Robert or Senator Almeida, but a larger, more sinister entity staring them down. John looked at Sophia, her face drained with fear, and understood that the clever turn was only the beginning of a far more dangerous battle. The live broadcast had exposed them to the world, and also painted targets on their backs for forces even Robert could not control. The Benefactor's threat hung in the air like a dense fog, but John refused to be paralyzed. In the days after the live broadcast, the video spread like fire through dry fields, unleashing a wave of public support that neither Robert nor his allies could contain. Headlines, now free of Robert's grip, blazed with the exposed corruption, and social networks pulsed with demands for justice. John knew the final battle would not be won in courts or newsrooms, but in the hearts of those involved. It was time for a direct confrontation with Robert, not with rage or revenge, but with unvarnished truth and a compassion born from his own wounds. With Sophia at his side, he marched toward the Blackwood mansion, not as an invader, but as a bearer of peace, determined to end the cycle of pain that had bound them all. The final confrontation unfolded in Robert's opulent office, where ruthless decisions had once been made. Robert sat behind the mahogany desk, his face mapped with stress, his eyes, once arrogant, now dulled by exhaustion. He looked at John and Sophia, who entered with quiet resolve, and instead of fury, a heavy silence did the talking. John broke it first, voice steady. "Robert, we are not here to fight. We are here to listen, and to tell the truth. You do not have to carry this burden alone anymore." He set a folder on the desk, the final proofs, Robert's diary, confessing humble origins and desperate acts to hide them, alongside documents showing how the benefactor had blackmailed him into silence. With trembling hands, Robert opened the diary. Memories of poverty and fear surged like a storm. "I only wanted to protect my daughters," he whispered, voice breaking. "But instead of protecting them, I pushed them away and destroyed innocent lives." Emily stepped into the office then, freed from the distant estate thanks to the community's allies. Her face, once pale with anguish, glowed with renewed calm. She spoke to her father without accusation, tears in her eyes. "Father, I love you, but love does not mean accepting what is wrong. John showed me that true wealth is in people, not power." The shared vulnerability opened a door to Robert's redemption. He looked at his daughters, Sophia, who had faced her own demons, and Emily, who had never lost faith in the good, and fell to his knees, a man broken beneath the weight of his mistakes. "I do not deserve your forgiveness," he cried, "but I promise to do what it takes to make this right." Robert agreed to cooperate with authorities, revealing everything about the benefactor and the international consortium in exchange for a chance to rebuild his life with integrity. Justice would not be only punishment, but healing. Robert would face legal consequences, and also receive help to confront his trauma and return to society as a force for good. The aftermath played out with tangible emotion. In the months that followed, Robert testified against the benefactor in a widely covered trial, leading to the consortium's dissolution and the arrest of its leaders. Community lands were returned to their families, and a compensation fund was established from Robert's fortune, now turned to noble ends. With Emily and Sophia's support, John transformed his ranch into a community center, a place where people from every background could learn about sustainable agriculture, ethics, and compassion. Daniel, freed after evidence cleared his name, became the project's director of communications, using his skills to tell stories of resilience. Children from the charity, now well-resourced, played in the ranch fields, a living symbol of hope restored. The lasting legacy was woven into transformed lives. John and Emily, united by a love that crossed impossible barriers, married in a simple ceremony at the ranch, surrounded by the community that had stood by them. Their marriage was not a conventional fairy tale, but a testament that true love blooms from honesty and mutual respect. They founded the Blackwood John Initiative, an organization dedicated to fighting social inequality and supporting entrepreneurs from humble origins, ensuring no one would need to betray their values to succeed. Redeemed and strengthened, Sophia took the helm of the family business with a new mission: to turn the empire into a model of ethics and social responsibility. Robert, those serving a sentence of community work, found peace by reconnecting with his roots, working alongside John on the ranch and teaching the young about the dangers of unbridled ambition. The story's closing message echoed beyond the screen. In a final interview, John looked into the camera with a calm smile and said, "This was not only my story, it was about how truth, embraced with courage, can transform hatred into understanding and pain into purpose." Never underestimate the power of a single act of kindness, because it can spark a revolution of hope. A new normal took hold, a world where John's ranch became a symbol of resilience, where billionaires and field workers stood together as equals, and where a once forbidden love now shone like a beacon of possibility. The rain that had once fallen like tears of despair now watered fields of new opportunity, and every dawn at the ranch carried the promise of a future built on the unshakable foundation of forgiveness and truth.